Hey everybody, it's Savannah Taylor, the Gardenista, your kitchen garden coach. And will you look at this beautiful bell pepper plant? My goodness, I came out here and the first thing I thought was this looks like a Christmas tree in September. My goodness, I've got just about every color here. I've got red and the yellow and the green and the orange. And you know what else? I'm gonna tell you right now. I definitely have stuffed bell peppers in my future, my very near future, like tonight for dinner, for sure. So, you know what? I wanted to talk about 3 tips for growing bell peppers. And then I said, well, maybe I should call it 5. But, I get to talking. And before you know it, I've got more tips. So it's going to be what it's going to be by the end of the video. How about that? Okay. So the first thing we want to talk about is temperature. Now, bell peppers are a tropical thing to grow. It's a tropical plant. Okay, so it does not like cold weather, although you can overwinter it. And I'll talk about that in just a second. But first things first, anything less than 55 degrees is too cold for bell peppers, to start them at least. Okay, you want to start your bell peppers if it's too cold outside, if it's below 55 degrees, you definitely want to start your bell peppers indoors. And bell peppers have a very long growing season. So if you have a very short warm season where you are, you definitely want to start them indoors and time it. So I would say anywhere from 2 to 3 months, you're going to start your bell peppers indoors in a nice, comfortable, warm, not cold environment so that they can get a good head start. And then when the temperatures warm up, you can go ahead and bring them outdoors. Harden them off first because we talked about that. If you have a plant that's been started indoors, they need a chance to get acclimated to the outdoors, and we call that hardening off. And the way you do that is you just bring it outside for an hour or two for every day, for the 3 days or so. It doesn't take very long. And that way they can get acclimated to the direct sun and the wind and the air and all of that. Okay. You don't want to send it into shock. So, but yeah, once it's hardened off, go ahead and transplant it to your outdoors. Now, I went ahead, this actually started, you all, from kitchen scraps, believe it or not. I chopped up a bell pepper during late spring, and I just took seeds from each bell pepper, organic. Okay, I bought an organic bell pepper, one of each kind. And as I chopped it up, I saved the seeds, and I literally came out here and I planted a bell pepper seed in a circle. Now, most people will tell you that you want to plant your bell peppers at least a foot apart. However, I just really planted them in there, I would say, maybe less than that, definitely. This is a 20-gallon grow bag. And I'll tell you in a second what the advantages are of that, especially when you're trying to overwinter your peppers. But this is a 20-gallon grow bag, and I've just put, let's see, there's about 7 pepper plants in this grow bag. Now, again, I strategically planted them in a circle and, spaced them out so that they're not on top of each other. I didn't just randomly, sprinkle the seeds in there. I literally intentionally planted them around, and I got a really beautiful harvest, as you can see here. But if you do have the space and you want to give them at least, a foot and a half of space, that's fine. But as you can see, I did this in a 20-gallon grow bag. And if you're limited on space, voila. Now, another thing about the temperatures, if you plant your peppers too early, it's still cold outside, what you're going to get, you may still get a plant, but it's going to be stunted. And if you get a stunted plant, that means you're going to get stunted fruit. So it is best to wait until the temperatures warm up, and or, like I said, start your seeds indoors if you know you're limited on the season, the warm season. I'm here in Southern California. I have a pretty long growing season, so I knew I would be safe, okay, to go ahead and have a nice warm climate for them to come up in. Now, with regards to extreme heat temperatures, a lot of you know that we have had a pretty big heat wave across the country. And there were some times where I had to pull it back underneath my patio because too much heat, and I'm talking triple digit day after day heat, can stress the plant out. And what will happen is the leaves will fall, which means your flowers are going to fall and your fruit's going to fall because the plant is stressed. So you do want to keep an eye out for that. Again, I kept it under my patio when it got a little too hot, where it was still able to get partial sun. But then when things calmed down a little bit, I brought it right back on out and it was fine. Okay. Because bell peppers do want full sun. They need about 6 to 8 hours of full sun. So you want to make sure that they get that. You don't want to grow a bell pepper plant underneath a shady tree. Okay. Got it? So when it comes to soil, I want to keep it very simple because I know a lot of my audience. We're not farmers, okay? We're kitchen gardeners. And when we get into acidity and pH and all that kind of stuff, I know I'm going to lose a lot of y'all, okay? So just to keep it simple, you can get soil that says for raised beds. As long as it says for raised beds on the bag, you're good, all right? And if you are one of those that compost like myself, absolutely you can mix in compost with your soil. You just don't want to start with soil from your yard or just some general dirt. You definitely want a soil for raised beds. And then once you buy that soil, it's good forever. All right. You don't have to throw it out and change it out. It's good forever. You can just repurpose it. All right. So what I have in my soil is a mixture of my compost and then of course some soil, raised bed soil that I've already had. So when it comes to that, that's what you definitely want to use. You don't want to have anything too heavy so that the roots start struggling. You don't want sand, you don't want clay, you don't want any of that. You want a nice fluffy soil. And like I said, I recommend making sure that the bag says for raised beds. All right. Now, if you're starting your bell peppers from seed, which I normally do, it's going to be a long growing season. We're talking about 6 months from the time you put the seed in the soil to the time you get bell peppers, full grown bell peppers ready to harvest. They do have a long growing season, but guess what? They're very rewarding. You get about 8 to 10 bells per plant in a growing season, and bell pepper plants can live up to 5 years. So you really get a great bang for your buck from just one little bell pepper seed. So what I recommend, if you really do love bell peppers, go ahead and stagger them, have one bag, and then when that starts sprouting up, or indoors, when that starts sprouting up, start another one. And again, you can overwinter these. Now, when I'm talking about overwintering, what I'm talking about is when the plant's going to go dormant when it gets cold. The advantage to having a grow bag, which are available in my Amazon store, is that you can move it if you live in an area that gets frosty. Okay. I'm here in Southern California. We don't normally get frost. If we do, it might be a handful of times out of the year. But even then, I can move it to a place where it's not going to get frostbitten and whatnot. Okay. Okay, so now just a word about pruning. You really don't need to prune a pepper plant. They're very low maintenance. Now, can you prune? Yes. They call it deadheading, where, that's a whole other video. I'm not going to go really into it, but just basically pruning the top of it so that the branches can, create more branches, which means more fruit. But if you're short on a growing season, you really don't want to take that kind of time because it will take extra time, of course, to grow those extra branches. You really don't need to do that. A pepper plant, you could just let it go. I did not prune this plant on purpose, just to show you guys how tall it gets and how much fruit I got. So again, pruning, it's a very low maintenance plant. It's not like a tomato plant. You can just let her rip. Okay, now with regards to watering, pepper plants are drought tolerant plants by nature, so you don't have to keep it heavily watered. Now, you don't want to let it get bone dry, but you do want to make sure that the soil stays, relatively moist. If you miss a day of watering, it should be fine. But one way that you can tell if you're overwatering is that the leaves will begin to curl. If you see that, you need to kind of lay back on the watering, let the plant dry out and collect itself, and then, resume as the soil is needed. Now, during the hot days, when we had those triple digit hot days, I did water my plant daily, even though I also pulled it up under the patio. And you can kind of judge when a plant is stressed. You'll see the leaves kind of falling and it's struggling. Okay, so you do want to keep an eye out for that. But generally, a pepper plant is a drought tolerant plant, and it does not have to be heavily watered. Okay, just make sure that soil is moist, make sure that the leaves aren't curling or falling, and you should be fine. Now, with regards to fertilizing, of course, if you follow me at all, I do use my compost tea for fertilizing. And compost tea is a very gentle fertilizer that can be used regularly. I used it every week. Sometimes you can use it with every watering. It's a very gentle fertilizer. It's not going to burn your plants. It should be fine. You're giving them right back what they are made of. Okay. Now, but if you're using a fertilizer off the shelf, and there's no problem with that, what I recommend is you definitely want to fertilize at the time of planting, at the time of transplanting, and also when you begin to see fruit. Now, since there is a long growing season, the general rule with pepper plants is you want to fertilize every 4 to 6 weeks. Okay, that way you can be sure to keep it healthy and nourished. And even when you're overwintering, you might want to just give it a little bit of a something so that when the weather warms back up again, it can already have a nice good head start. The soil is healthy. Okay, but if you're using, the compost tea like I use, you can use that anytime. And this, again, these big, beautiful peppers are just compost tea. I did not use any off the shelf fertilizer. So if compost tea is all you have, you're in good shape. All right. So that's all I have for you guys. If you have any questions, please feel free to put them down below. I love to hear from you. Be sure to stock up on your gardening supplies in my Amazon store. I have a link down below. And until we grow something again, I'll see you then. All right. Bye-bye.